And as you can see, there's a, actually you can't see. Hitting that, orangish button there will take you to our presentation as well as a full text of the act. It's all available to download there.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Very informative, very helpful. While the panel is setting up, I just want to again reference the materials that we have available to you and make sure you understand that you can use the materials as a best reference, make different changes, make it available to your board, use it as a primer for their duties as directors and officers. I also want to call your attention to the article behind the panel tab in your materials. You'll find an article entitled Lawyers Giving Back, Think of the Possibilities, Best Practices of Nonprofit Risk Management, and the co-authors are Bobby and myself. And we wrote this article about 4 years ago for a law school publication. That's why we geared it towards lawyers in the title. Quite frankly, it could be used for any board of directors, and it's a summary of the materials that have been provided today. It's a supplement of the materials as well. There's a shorthand version of the materials that have been provided for officers and directors to guide them on their duties. I also want to remind you again of the evaluation that's in the very back of the materials. Just evaluate it fairly. Rip it out, leave it on the table, or leave it at the front desk. For the lawyers that remain in the audience, I don't want to get dinged for not having provided you forms. I acknowledge freely that we do not have forms in these materials, and there's a very good reason why. And that is because this act has not yet been passed. And we didn't want to get the cart before the horse of preparing forms for legislation that has not yet been approved. And furthermore, we do have until July 1st in order to provide the forms before the enactment of this legislation. And like the Secretary of State's office has done for nonprofit or for-profit corporations and current nonprofits, will have some forms available on the SOS website. So forms will be forthcoming. You'll hear more conversation from our Business Law Committee and Bobby's subcommittee regarding forms. And because it's a model act, we have other states to draw from in terms of making forms available. We're going to open this up to questions from the panel. And to kick this off, and then I'll run around with the microphone because we want to capture the questions on the videotape. Just like I did last week in Rapid City, I want to start this off to acknowledging the fact that you're busy professionals, your board of directors has sent you here to gather information, to advise them on whether you should convert your existing nonprofit organization to the new act or stay with the old act. And you need an elevator speech for your board of directors. You need something that summarizes this 4-hour presentation in a 5-minute bullet point preparation, remarks to your board, and I'm going to have my panel do that for you. So get your pencils ready, take notes, and I divided this panel in two sides, the pro-conversion side and the con-conversion side. And I've asked Bobby and Alex to take the pro-conversion side, and Paul and Andrew to take the con-conversion side. We'll start out with Bobby. Bobby, give us the pro for converting to the new act.
I can really say that in one word: update. So if you take a look at it, I think really the question becomes, how do you do and operate your nonprofit business? And are the current laws doing it justice? If you want to communicate electronically, if you want to have different opportunities to convert and to have other opportunities like for-profits already have, then you're going to want to look to the revised model on corporation act. I think it tries to serve those in the trenches and really allow nonprofits to accelerate in today's world. The other option is obviously staying handcuffed to 1965. And for some of you, that might work. But I think for the large majority of nonprofits in South Dakota, that doesn't work well. And then the other question I would pose to you, because at the end of the day, it's up to you guys to make these decisions, is what is the cost of not updating, of not following the laws? How does that look to your donors and to your staff when you aren't following the law currently? Because as nonprofits, again, it is a privilege, and you do have to dot the i's and cross the t's.
Thank you, Bobby. Andrew, we're going to alternate. Give us the con conversion.
Well, if everything's going great for me, why would I switch? I've been in a nonprofit corporation that's been in existence for decades, and we have our operations, we have our procedures, everything's going great. I don't have to, have the cost of updating, go see an attorney and get my bylaws updated, go look at new policies. It all seems like a lot of work and just too much cost.
Alex, why don't you give us your pro? And while he's giving those remarks, get your hands up for questions. I'll run around with the microphone and we'll get to questions after Alex and Paul.
One of the pros that I wanted to talk about is there are approximately 23 other states in the U.S. that have adopted some form of this Model Act. So South Dakota is not going to be the first one to step into the 21st century on this. There are lots of great provisions, obviously, that we've talked about today that can really help. We're not the first. We've taken really the best of what exists in the 1965 Act and combined it with the Model Act to get you what we have presented for you today. So I think that this is really the best of both worlds, the old South Dakota Act meshed with the great provisions of the Model Act, and let's step into be the 24th or 25th state now in the country that has adopted some form of this Model Act.
And just following up on Alex's comments, so often we as attorneys are asked to write opinions, give opinions on whether you can do this or whether you can do that, or what's the path to accomplish this, or what's the legal issues that need to be addressed before this decision is made. And under the current law, we have a lot of silence on a lot of issues. And we take the position that if it's not specifically forbidden by law, then we can probably do it. With the Model Act, we can go to other states, the 22 other states that Alex has referenced, and use the case law, the authorities, the reference material that's been generated by those states, and use those as guides to give our opinions and back up those opinions. So from a legal standpoint, there's a great sense of comfort that we're going to have access to additional authority that backs up the opinions that lawyers give to nonprofits. Paul, give us your comment.
Well, to be honest, this is going to be difficult because I am kind of in favor of it, but really what it boils down to is this. My articles of incorporation were signed by Joyce Hazeltine many years ago. I follow South Dakota law. I a small nonprofit, less than $20,000 a year in income. As a matter of fact, it's almost kind of a hobby what we do. I've got the board members who all live down the road. If I ever need to call Tom, I can just call him and he comes down to our board meetings. And we handle it all by paper. It's very informally. As a matter of fact, we try to meet once a quarter. So really, what's the big deal? This is a good thing for the big nonprofits, the Averas and Sanfords and the foundations here in the state, but this is just not relevant to me. I do the 990N on an annual basis, but I'm good to go, and there's no reason why I should change. It's possible I could send out an email, but I'm not even on Facebook, so we're fine. We send out annual newsletters. We get donors in who, when they come stop by, they write a check and that kind of thing. So it's good for the big boys. It's good for the big nonprofits, but we're fine out here in rural South Dakota.
Thank you, Paul. Questions? Questions from the audience? Mr. Lutz.
Let's assume that we have a nonprofit that's decades and decades old. They don't have a retention policy for records. So in somebody's basement, there's decades of records that are boxes. Now they're going to make the conversion to the new act, So the records can now be electronic on somebody's computer. The program will change in 10 years and nobody can access them. Those old records that exist, can they be scanned now and just saved electronically and then throw away the boxes and boxes, in this case, rooms of records?
If you elect to be under the new act, you could scan and store, and then yes, the paper files could be deleted. But you would want to obviously make sure that wherever you're storing them is backed up, that you have some safeguards in place to ensure that those documents don't, if a computer crashes, if a server crashes, that you don't lose all that. So I would advise that might be a place that's appropriate to use, something like Dropbox or something that has some cloud storage that would come along with it. But the answer to the question is yes. If you elect to fall under the new act, you could scan, PDF all of those documents and then delete the original, or shred the originals.
And a related question would be, let's assume they don't want to make the switch. I'm assuming what I'm hearing that I can't, on going forward basis, store them electronically. I have to continue to keep them.
That's correct. Unless you elect to fall under the new act.
All of them.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good question, Joe. Back here.
I assume there'll be, I guess if you don't opt for the new, there's no timeline. If you're doing some of these things like electronic records or something like that, is there any certain time you need to opt into the new? And then or do you anticipate there could be a checklist that somebody could have to go through and make sure that you get you're covered on your new things?
With regard to the time frame, again, there is no time limit. The clock doesn't start ticking by graduation. So for some nonprofits, maybe they want to wait and kind of see the process evolve. And 2 years down the road, they do it. For some, because of their business operations and the mission they serve, they're going to want to be effective immediately. So there really isn't a time frame. And as far as a checklist, I think it's a great idea. We don't have one at this point, but potentially, yeah, that's definitely something we could talk about working on. And the other thing too, just having that ongoing checklist, and like Andrew mentioned, with best practices. And that's something really nonprofits should be cognizant about and make sure that they're following those rules anyway. So that's something we can work on definitely.
The other thing I would say, just to add to that, is remember, as it relates to record retention, electronic notice, some of that, the new act is going to open things up for you to do. So as far as checklists to make sure you're complying, chances are you're probably doing things that are allowed under the new act but aren't necessarily allowed under the existing act. So you're probably going to be more compliant if you opt to go into the 16 Act than what you are in the 65 Act anyway. So from a checklist perspective, it'd probably be a checklist or a cautionary list of items that if you don't elect or nominate, make sure, or if you don't choose to be under the new act, here's, watch out for these things, because you're probably doing them and they're not right.
You got a question right here, so get your hands up and we'll try to get to you.
Could you please comment on the impact and/or implications of operating under the proposed act versus the old act for out-of-state national and/or international donations?
With regard to donations, if an organization falls under different tax sets like C3, really for donative intentions and purposes like that, it's going to be governed under the IRS, Internal Revenue Code. However, as far as those different organizations wanting to have an entity or organization or chapter in South Dakota, that makes sense. I mean, right now, our laws really do limit that ability. So it would open up. The other thing that I think is that these changes make South Dakota so competitive. Now we are going to be a forum that nonprofits can look to come to. Right now when I have clients and they say, well, we do some operations in Minnesota or South Dakota or Iowa, really our laws have been so neglected that it's hard for me to tell someone to set up their forum here in South Dakota. So I think that is a very a big deal for nonprofits here, wanting to organize more under South Dakota and the ability to do that.
Other questions?
Right by you, Pat.
You indicated that you recommend the LLC if there's real estate involved. Can you expand on that just a little bit?
Great question.
So really, the charging order is the real remedy that you have against an LLC, and you're so limited how you can get those bills, things like that, on a litigation perspective. You're really tying the hands of that person suing you. They're so limited in what they can recover. So from a liability standpoint, that LLC is really the premier entity to go to. And to hold that real estate, again, because of the risks involved with holding real estate, the LLC is again, kind of that choice of entity to go to. And right now, we do have existing nonprofits in South Dakota that have the LLC because they wanted that. They did that under 1023. But again, right now, they're not made available to the protections of the nonprofit under the Nonprofit Corporation Act. So it's kind of an injustice. We allow this federally, but we don't even allow this at our state and local level.
Thank you. This reveals that I haven't read the act, but in relation to the LLC, is it formed under the LLC chapter, or is there a separate set of statutes?
Right now, if you wanted to have a charitable purpose for 1023 to get that 501c3 status, you would actually form under the Limited Liability Company Act, the For-Profit Act. You could not fall under that Nonprofit Corporation Act. So currently, yeah, your option is doing that LLC. Now, if this proposed law goes through and the gatekeepers say, yes, we want this for South Dakota, then you will actually have that ability. And as Pat mentioned, some of those forms are going to hopefully be available on the Secretary of State's website because now you're going to have that Articles of Organization, just like you have the Articles of Incorporation.
And that will fall under wherever the new act is codified, right?
Other questions? Do we have any legislators here? We were privileged to have legislators at the Rapid City session, and they contributed to the discussion and carried the discussion. If there are no other questions, I'll sure bring this to a conclusion, but I don't want to cut anybody off. There we go.
Pat just wanted some wine, I can tell.
Oh, that was
It's been a long
nice.
day.
Okay, you didn't tell me that. No, I was just going to say, is there if we want somebody to come speak to a group of nonprofits, who you just contact the South Dakota Bar? Is that, because just for instance, we have a regional economic development quarterly meeting up in Aberdeen, South Dakota. I think it'd be great if we could have somebody come to that meeting just to talk about this, to give everybody a heads up.
All of us up here would absolutely love to do that. Just any one of us or any other member. The members that have been involved on the nonprofit subcommittee would probably be the best choice. But I think all of us have kind of put the blood, sweat, and tears into this and do sincerely believe it's in nonprofit's best interest, so we'd be happy to do that.
And, Bobby's contact information, all of our contact information is on, sdbar.org or statebarofsouthdakota.com, and you can find our contact information there. And, the nonprofit subcommittee of the business committee has members all over the state, and we can definitely get somebody to talk to.
Any other questions? The comment I was about to make regarding our legislators is, we went until about 5:20 at the Rapid City presentation, and I attribute that to the fact that we had politicians there making speeches and directing the conversation. So you've been a great audience. We do very much appreciate you spending the afternoon with us. As your reward, we are going to adjourn to the reception in the maple room just inside the restaurant. Thank Jeff Belkamp and South Dakota Community Foundation for their hospitality and hosting that reception. It's complimentary, so come and enjoy with us, and look forward to seeing you there. Thanks again for your participation.